I would invite all who would care to stand and join in the recitation of the Lord's Prayer, followed by a moment of silence. Our
Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Shelby City Council meeting is called to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Be seated, please. For the record, just before we have our roll call, this meeting tonight is first, and that is being live streamed from our Shelby City website. In the era of the coronavirus, we are holding our meetings with the public access via this streaming. We would also invite folks to tune in and to spread the word about this coverage, publicly accessing by live stream. Okay, roll call please,
Mr. Robb? Here. Mr. Roberts? Here. Mr. Gates?
Here.
Mr. Martin?
Here.
Mr. McLaughlin?
And I do not know where Mr. McLaughlin may be. I have not heard that something may have happened throughout the afternoon or something, so we'll make our way down through before we get to legislation. Would please council if at that point we'll ask for a motion to excuse his absence. Let's give it a few more minutes. Let's do that. Entertain a motion to dispense with the reading of the journal for March 23rd, 2020.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Roberts and a second by Mr. Martin to dispense with the reading of the journal from March 23, 2020. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Robb?
Yay.
Mr. Roberts? Yay. Mr. Gates?
Yay.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
That motion passes. Public comment. Of course, we don't have anyone here this evening in the chambers. We would invite public comment through the week. If you have a comment you would like to make on a piece of legislation or maybe a matter to address with the administration or council, we would invite you to either mail that in or email that by Friday at 4 o'clock, previous to our meeting, and we will try to include those comments in any legislative discussion or any matters that you wish to be brought before council. Mr. Martin.
Can we also make sure that we put that out on the city's Facebook page, inviting it the week prior to the meeting?
Sure.
Just to make sure it's well publicized.
Right. I know we publicize, but yeah, we'll get out any form or fashion we can. Thank you. Okay. Reports from standing and special committees. The committees, the Community and Economic Development Committee did not meet. Neither did the Safety Committee, nor the Public Works and General Operations Committee. So there'll be no reports. In the future, I think we can line up meetings again under this format. I think that would be a good way to continue committee meetings in this environment. Reports of city officials. Under the mayor's report, I do have 2 proclamations I'd like to deliver this evening, and then these will be given to the appropriate parties. We have a proclamation of National Library Week, and it reads as follows. Whereas today's libraries are less about what they have on the shelves and more about what they can do with and for their communities, and whereas libraries have long served as trusted and treasured institutions where people of all ages, interests, and backgrounds can come together and learn alongside one another. And whereas libraries of all types are at the heart of their cities, schools, and campuses, and whereas libraries offer members of the community a welcoming space and opportunity to explore new passions through technology, programs, and services, and whereas libraries and librarians help patrons find tools to help improve the quality of their lives, and whereas libraries, which promote the free exchange of information and ideas for all, are cornerstones of democracy, and whereas libraries strive to develop and maintain programs and collections that are as diverse as the populations they serve, and whereas libraries and librarians work to create an equitable society by providing free access to accurate information to all people, and whereas libraries are a resource for all members of their community, offering services and educational programming that transform lives and strengthen communities, and whereas libraries, librarians, library workers, and supporters across America are celebrating National Library Week, now therefore I, Stephen L. Shagg, Mayor of the City of Shelby, do hereby proclaim April 19th through the 25th, 2020 as National Library Week. During this time, I encourage all residents to visit the library, a place where we can all belong and discover who we are. Because of you, libraries transform. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand to cause the seal of the City of Shelby, Ohio, to be affixed this 6th day of April in the year of our Lord, 2020. And again, we have a truly a treasured resource in the City of Shelby with our Marvin Memorial Library, and we will pass this proclamation along to them. The second proclamation is a proclamation of Child Abuse Prevention Month. Whereas children in Richland County are our most valuable resource, and they need our support to thrive and grow into healthy, productive adults, and whereas during National Child Abuse Prevention Month, we renew our unwavering commitment to protecting children and responding to child abuse, promoting healthy families, and building a brighter future for all. And whereas every child deserves a nurturing family and a safe environment free from fear, abuse, and neglect. And whereas parents, guardians, relatives, and neighbors all share a responsibility to prevent these devastating crimes, and our local government plays a critical role as well. And whereas since 1883, the agency has been committed to helping future generations succeed in focused on ensuring the safety and well-being of all families, and is partnering with local, state, and federal agencies to improve the lives of children and their families. And whereas I today call upon all Shelby residents to join the effort to keep children safe and families strong, now therefore I, Stephen L. Shagg, Mayor of the City of Shelby, do hereby proclaim April 2020 as Child Abuse Prevention Month, and urge all citizens to join Richland County Children's Services and its partners as they support each family's efforts to keep themselves and their children safe, healthy, and in a nurturing environment. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Shelby, Ohio, to be affixed this 6th day of April in the year of our Lord, 2020. And we applaud the efforts of the Richland County Children's Services. I know they are also encouraging everyone on April the 8th, Wednesday, to wear blue, to bring awareness to the issue of child abuse and things we can do to prevent that. And I know in this environment, there may be some issues, families, of course, being together a lot more these days. We're looking for ways we can get them kind of outside, get a little exercise, a little space, and hopefully will not have an increase in child abuse as a result of these of the stay-at-home orders. So maybe this awareness is more important than ever in 2020. I'll move on with my report. The City of Shelby has continued to provide public services to the best of our ability while operating under the Ohio Department of Health's statewide directives. Our health department staff is attempting to handle inquiries from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. each day. Our first responders are holding up remarkably well while working in this most difficult and stressful environment. Across the board, our employees have displayed a great spirit of teamwork and cooperation. We all know this health crisis will have a negative impact upon our revenues. It is nearly impossible to project the actual loss of revenue, but I believe we need to brace ourselves for significant reductions in expenditures for the balance of this year. Thankfully, we came into the year with a healthy general fund balance. And I, with you, am praying for a timely conclusion of this health crisis, as well as a steady and robust recovery. And gentlemen, that is my report for this evening. Are there any questions or corrections or additions or comments? Mr. Gates.
Mayor, have you or the health department received any complaints about non-essential businesses being open?
We received actually 2. We made, there was one inquiry, so I went to the business and they showed me the documentation that they're in the essential chain of businesses. And then we had a smaller business, a dog grooming business that was not essential, and the owner was very, very cooperative. Both car washes in town, I did make a phone call to Richland Public Health and say they're handling car washes, and that is the automated portions of those could remain open, but closing off the bays and the vacuum sweepers. So those are I think that's about all we've had as far as in the city.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I'm trying to hide behind the screen here, but. And I will say, this is our first actually live streaming. And we'll probably do something different with these cameras, but we're trying to accommodate social distancing and where do you place the camera in this type of environment? This is very unusual for us. So it's a process, and we'll see if we can make some improvements in the days going forward. But after this passes, we'll be, we're resuming our normal places. I think it'll be easier for us to cover. But I want to thank Mr. Geis for getting this set up so quickly. It's fascinating to me that we're able to do this evening. So our thanks to Mr. Joe Geis, our project coordinator. All right. Moving on, Mr. Crum, Director of Finance.
Thank you. The most important thing for me was we did get the appropriations sent over to the county and it's been approved. So thank you all for all of your hard work getting that through so that we could get that submitted and continue on for another year. Income tax wise, as many of you are aware, please tell your citizens that we have met, or we are going with the federal guidelines, and our due date is now July 15th. For the time being, if people would mail in their tax returns, the tax clerks are still working, and so we can do everything via mail. They're also welcome to call in with any questions they have about their tax returns. That is the most of it. Obviously, the next thing is the mayor said, projecting where we're going to end up, and it's tough to say yet because we don't know how long everything's going to be shut down, and so we're being very conservative with our funds right now, making sure that the essentials are paid and putting off projects that can be put off, and we'll make those determinations down the road. That's really all I have, unless anybody has any questions or comments.
Mr. Martin?
Income tax always lags a year, right, as far as to downturns. So what we really need to be looking at is the withholding numbers. Are we seeing a drop at this time in the withholding numbers that is significant, or is that just to be determined?
I'll be able to tell you better in the next couple weeks, because a lot of the payrolls that are coming through just now are based on when they were still employed. So I will get you that information probably within the next week. I can give you a better analysis.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Crum. Mr. Ister is not with us here this evening. Mr. Geis, Project Coordinator.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have quite a few things to go over. normally we'd have we're planning on having our paving project here to authorize to go out for bids. We received information from the county engineer, they received from the state to expect a 30% reduction in paving dollars because of people are not driving. They're not buying gas, so therefore those funds are going down. And also one other thing that we keep, the BMVs are shut down. So those will catch up, but for right now, any of those taxes that we got, I don't think we got a lot from that, but those are gonna be delayed and so forth. So, talking with the mayor and Mr. Ensign and I think at this point, our paving project just ought to be put on hold until we get a better grasp on where things are at with this. Even our income tax for paving is derived on, people working. There's a lot of people that aren't working right now, so that's going to drastically affect our operations. For the West Main Street Sewer Project, they will be closing the road down Wednesday through Friday, so the work can be completed on that. They're doing the main line, that portion that's out in the road. Smiley Gamble intersection, we had our final inspection with ODOT and the consulting engineer who did the inspection. Punch list items will be completed this week on that. The City Hall roof was another on hold project at this time. Those are a lot of general fund monies. We will have the contractor come and give it another patch, go through it and just make sure so we can put some more Band-Aids on it, but eventually that's gonna have to get done, but these are tough times. I did have a discussion with the wastewater treatment plant superintendent, Mr. Brown. There's a lot of articles we get through government on the website and magazines and so forth. Across the country, wastewater treatment plants are having issues with residents flushing more than toilet paper down the drain. And with the toilet paper shortage, they're being a little creative on what they're using, but even flushable wipes are not flushable. We do have a very good screen piece of equipment that does get that out, but it doesn't get all of them. And it really does wreak havoc on pumps and other equipment and so forth out there. It can be very costly for them. We did receive information of our OPWC project this year was the East Main Street Sewer, that little small sewer going from High School Avenue to Mohican. We got word late last week with the State of Ohio's capital bill. Those funds are part of that, and we were told it's on hold right now. So normally they pass that budget for July 1st and we're able to award the contracts. They're saying don't count on it this year because everything is so much up in the air with that. So we will, the plans are basically almost done, so we'll just kind of hold on and see where things are at so we know when to put those out. We can't award it till after July 1st anyhow, so it's not that big of a deal. Our building and zoning permits, we've been working, I don't know, when I get the phone calls and so forth, people have been very good. They'll mail in the zoning information and so forth, and with a check, and I mail them out a permit. It's worked well. I did have a discussion with the county building department for the projects who need building permits. They have a drop box and or mail in. Their inspectors and plans examiners are working from home. It's just the ladies that are in the office. They get that information, and then basically if it's big plans or whatever, a lot of it's done electronically, but they're mailing them out to the inspectors. So the timeline for plan reviews, especially on commercial, is going to be at least 30 days, I was told. Their inspectors are also doing their inspections by video. So the permit holdee has to download an app on their phone or laptop or whatever, and basically they'll walk around the project and show the inspector and so forth. So that's how they're doing it to be in compliance. So very creative there, but it's going to be interesting. So, and that's all I have. Is there any question?
Mr. Martin?
The property on East Jefferson, do we know what's going on there, or have you been able to work on that yet?
I have not been able to get there yet.
Any other questions or comments? I may say in conjunction with wastewater treatment plant issues, we're putting an ad in the paper, I think it'll appear on Thursday. It's a little campaign across Ohio. It's No Wipes in the Pipes campaign. And so we actually, it's an advertisement, it's pretty clever, but hopefully just that simple little saying will begin to sink in and spread to the community, no wipes in the pipes. So that should appear Thursday at our Daily Globe. So I hope that helps too. Thank you, Mr. Guys. New business, is there any new business brought before council this evening? Hearing or seeing none. Unfinished business, future use of Main Street Fire Station, there's many things that's kind of on the back burner right now. Address that as something they changed there. And the exterior property maintenance on 59 West Main Street, again, I know that the owner is anxious to sell that building. And I've heard at one time or another it was kind of in its final stages, but that was before all this COVID-19 hit, so stay tuned for any further developments there. I don't think anything's getting worse as far as that building is concerned. Any other unfinished business? Shall we return to excusing Mr. McLaughlin this evening? Would I entertain a motion to excuse Mr. McLaughlin? Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Robertson, a second by Mr. Martin to excuse Mr. McLaughlin this evening, and I can think of nothing else, but something serious must have happened here this evening, so I have not heard from him today. So, any further discussion on that? Roll call, please.
Mr. Rob?
Yay.
Mr. Roberts?
Yay.
Mr. Gates?
Yay.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
The motion to excuse passes.
Mayor, I move to name Councilman Rob as Vice President Pro Tem for this evening.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gates and a second by Mr. Martin to name Councilman Rob as Councilman Vice President Pro Tem this evening. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Rob?
Yay.
Mr. Roberts?
Yay.
Mr. Gates?
Yay.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
That motion passes. Thank you. We move forward then to legislation.
Ordinance number 9-2020, amending section 1050.02, rates and charges for service.
Move the ordinance be taken up for first reading.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Martin, a second by Mr. Roberts for the first reading of ordinance number 9-2020. Discussion? Mr. Martin.
Mayor, this is actually supposed to be by emergency, as you can see in the now therefore clause, and also in section 4. This was supposed to be done by emergency. So I would move that the ordinance requiring that ordinance be read on 3 separate occasions be suspended.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Martin and a second by Mr. Roberts that the rule requiring that an ordinance be read on 3 separate occasions be suspended. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Rob?
Yay.
Mr. Roberts?
Yay.
Mr. Gates?
Yay.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
That motion passes. Back to the main motion. Discussion? Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. This came about because some nurses in town had inquired for places to stay in case there was a spike in Shelby, and they just needed a place to be able to sleep, but at the same time not have to go back to their families necessarily because it's spiking and such. And so we put this together, but we also, I worked with the law director to word it in such a way that it could apply outside of this crisis as well. So for example, if we had another tornado hit town and a local church set up as a shelter, or the local hotel set up as a shelter, or even landlords were able to cover down during those emergencies as well. So it's not just limited to this emergency. It's something that can be a part of our ordinances and be applicable for future emergencies as well. In essence, what it does is it provides utility relief for those landlords or churches that are using their facilities and providing them at no cost to those that are affected. Basically to help out with some of their overhead.
Mr. Gates.
Mayor, I'm certainly in favor of this piece of legislation. It's the right thing to do. I hope that, though, in the next few weeks, perhaps before the next council meeting, we might think in a broader sense on how we might provide some significant utility relief to the community as a whole.
We've been having some of those discussions.
I know there's been some discussions about the share fund and how that might be augmented, which is a good thing. You know, I hear one side of those conversations as they come into Helpline, but I think we need to even be more significant than that. We've talked over the years about reducing the amount of cash in the electric fund. Well, the one sure way to do that is to waive electric bills across the board. So we get two things done at once. We accomplish our goal of reducing the amount of money in the electric fund, and again, we provide significant utility relief throughout the city, not just to a small number that may or may not ever get the relief that's in this particular piece of legislation.
And that's been on the table too. So I think we'll have, I understand exactly what you're saying, so we'll continue to look in any ways we can to bring, as you mentioned, significant relief. That's what I'd like to see. Any further discussion on?
Yes, Mayor. I ask unanimous consent to amend the title so that it reads as follows: amending section 1050.02, parenthesis, rates and charges for services, close parenthesis, of chapter 1050, parenthesis, electricity, close parenthesis, of the codified ordinances of the city of Shelby and declaring an emergency.
Do you have that written down? You
I
give it to
do.
the clerk? Okay, so
Thank you.
I think you all have heard the change to be made by unanimous consent, that amendment to be made by unanimous consent. Is there an objection to that, changing the title? If not, it will be changed as so read, and be given to the clerk. Thank you. Any further discussion? Mr. Gates.
Also, Mayor, in the first whereas paragraph, I ask unanimous consent to insert a comma after the word emergencies.
All right, it's asked in the first whereas, that we place a comma after the word emergencies to make that amendment. Are there objections to that? All right, hearing none, the comma will be placed after the word emergencies. Any further discussion? Mr. Gates.
Mayor, I move that the motion for first reading be amended to final passage.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Gates and a second by Mr. Martin that the words first reading be stricken and replaced with final passage. Discussion on that motion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Mr. Rob?
Yay.
Mr. Roberts? Mr. Gates?
Yay.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
That motion passes. Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Rob?
Yay.
Mr. Roberts? Mr. Gates?
Yay.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Ordinance number 9, 2020 passes. Thank you.
Resolution number 15, 2020. Authorizing the mayor as Director of Public Service to purchase SEL 411 relays for the electric distribution center and declaring an emergency.
Move the resolution be taken up and passed.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gates and a second by Mr. Martin for the passage of Resolution 15, 2020. Discussion? Mr. Martin?
Mr. Insman, sent me a text message, and I'm going to relay that to you guys over this. We are asking for an emergency. It's due to the loss of the secondary breaker relay at the George Hawk sub during the last outage. The secondary breaker connects the switchgear to the primary side. Our reliability could suffer without expediting the relay. We are running out of options for our redundancy. So that's the reason that it is being put as an emergency, because we are in emergent need.
Thank you. That's good information. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Rob?
Yay.
Mr. Roberts? Mr. Gates?
Yay.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Resolution number 15, 2020 passes.
Resolution number 16, 2020. Authorizing the mayor as Director of Public Service to participate in the ODOT road salt contracts awarded in 2020 and declaring an emergency.
Move the resolution be taken up and passed.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Martin and a second by Mr. Gates, since it was in unison. And discussion. Mr. Geis, I think you wanted to say something. I don't think I've ever witnessed that before.
This is the first time we've gone about this way. I had a lot of discussions with ODOT. What I included, and basically the resolution is our contract with ODOT, the way they have it set up. All the rest of that document is what ODOT puts out for the different salt suppliers and so forth. I thought there was some interesting stuff in there you might want to see and how that operates. With that being said, with this resolution was prepared and so forth before we got the word of the 30% reduction on our gas tax and so forth, which we did plan on using to buy this salt. So in our discussion with Mr. Crum, the mayor, and Mr. Renzo, we would request the council possibly postpone this to the next meeting and give us more time to look and see if it's 1,600 tons. We may not be able to afford 1,600 tons. This does have a requirement that you buy 90% of what we asked for, so we may have to really look at this. The county is actually putting another salt contract out. They're putting most of their eggs into this basket, the ODOT basket, so the price we get going through the county is not going to be very good, I can tell you that, because we just have a few of the townships. A lot of the townships are jumping on the ODOT one, so we really got to do some thinking about how we're going to do this.
So you said it's probably the best price. We have to determine how much we can buy at that price. Oh, projected. Okay. Mr. Gates.
Mayor, I move the resolution be postponed to the next regular meeting of City Council.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gates and a second by Mr. Martin to postpone the resolution until the next meeting of City Council. Discussion on the motion to postpone? Roll call, please.
Mr. Rob?
Yay.
Mr. Roberts? Mr. Gates?
Yay.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
The motion to postpone passes. Thank you.
Resolution number 18, 2020. Adopting the 5-year update of the solid waste management plan of Richland County, Ohio.
Move the resolution be taken up and passed.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Roberts and a second by Mr. Martin for the passage of Resolution 18, 2020. Discussion? Mr. Gates.
The plan was fascinating reading.
Thank you.
I've got my notes and dog ears in case anyone wants proof that in fact I plowed through it.
You are the one who would plow through.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Rob?
Yay.
Mr. Roberts? Mr. Gates?
Yeah.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Resolution number 18, 2020 passes. Miscellaneous business. Mr. Martin.
It's hard to believe that was the longest march of our lives, I think, but it is April, and this is, we are going into Holy Week as millions of Christians, not the Orthodox traditions, and it's a different week, but who are going to be celebrating that this week. And many are going to be celebrating in a much different fashion than they're accustomed to celebrating Holy Week as we go into this week. But I would like to wish a happy Easter to all those who are celebrating this week. And indeed, there is a lot of not just grace and mercy, but there's also a perpetual hope that lives within this week. And I hope that in these dark times, that people who are of that tradition would look forward to that perpetual hope to again help us to help our neighbors, to help those in our community, and to get through this together.
Thank you. Any further miscellaneous business? Mr. Gates.
Mayor, move council adjourn.
Second?
We have a motion by Mr. Gates and a second by Mr. Martin for adjournment. Roll call, please.
Mr. Rob?
Yay.
Mr. Roberts? Mr. Gates?
Yeah.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Council adjourns at 7:37. Thank you, gentlemen.